What would you do with this long, narrow space between a fence and a sidewalk and right along a busy street? My name is Eve, I'm a landscape designer, and today we're going to learn a few different landscape design strategies that can turn this challenging area into something beneficial. If you have a landscape design challenge area, you can submit your photos for a chance to be featured in an upcoming video. More information in the description below. Ideally, in landscape design, you start by learning as much as you can about the space. If you think it's not the kind of space you would want to spend time in, it's not very comfortable, it's not very relaxing, it's narrow, it's exposed, but that doesn't mean that this is wasted space. For example, this space could be used to increase privacy or to create a noise barrier for the space inside the yard, right? Without actually losing space inside the yard. The space is also right along the street, which could be viewed as an opportunity to add a little beauty to share with others. You could grow plants that support pollinators, you could plant things here that produce food. Even the smallest space is an incredible opportunity to create something beautiful and beneficial. So let's talk about plant selection. This is a tricky space to properly select plants for because it's north-facing, so the lower plants, the ones that are shorter than the fence, are going to be very well shaded by the fence, unless they grow up and over the fence, right? If they get a little bit taller, then they're going to get quite a bit of sun once they get over the fence. Right now we have these 3 really nice trees that will grow to be quite large, and they will provide a lot of shade, and they will shade the space even more over time as they grow. Regardless, it's still a pretty dry area thanks to the reflective heat from the sidewalk and the street. So we're going to need some tough, relatively drought-tolerant plants that can tolerate a range of conditions over time. That's the general idea, and a little bit of experimentation may be in order. And I'm so happy to see this space featuring street trees. They are incredibly valuable. They'll cool the area, they'll cool down the reflective heat, they'll provide privacy, create a noise barrier, they increase property value. They make this yard they'll make this yard way more comfortable to spend time in. And when walking down the street, folks are going to be relieved to have the opportunity to walk through this shady spot. Right now, the weeds are filling in, and we want to do something to decrease this maintenance, decrease the need for weeding. So we need to consider some soil covering. The soil must always be covered by something, otherwise plants will come in to cover it, usually what we call weeds. So to decrease weeds, we must cover the soil with plants or mulch or something. Arborist chips are a favorite mulch material of mine. You could just mulch this area and solve the weed problem and call it a day, but let's add some plants. Let's do a little bit more than that, so it's not just all mulch. And since we're right along a busy street, covering them with gravel or rock or gravel of some sort, it has some benefit. And I'm personally not the world's biggest fan of using rock as mulch in my climate because it requires maintenance, essentially cleaning, as well as periodic refreshing over time because soil will build up in the cracks and weeds will begin to increase over time. But no soil covering material is perfect. An upside is that the rocks aren't going to be flammable if someone were to toss a cigarette, for example, when driving by on this busy street. However, the leaves will still need to be cleaned out of the rock seasonally, so still not my top choice, but may be worth the downsides. Now, I love plants. I want to put plants everywhere, but let's start out with a low or a no plant design idea. Big rocks can be a bit of work to get into place, but they would be a beautiful way to add some interest to the space or some sort of sculpture that would be hard for, someone walking down the street to pick up and take home because sometimes people do stuff like that. So in a public, street side space like this, that's something to take into consideration. We have about 4 feet or 1.2 meters of space between the fence and the sidewalk. This means we should go with plants that are narrow or maturing to something perhaps 3 feet or less. So there's space between the fence and the plant as well as in between the sidewalk and the plant. We don't want things growing out into the sidewalk that we have to prune all the time. That just increases maintenance, although that is a choice. And mature plant sizes are always going to be a bit subjective because plants rarely follow the guidelines, but paying attention to mature plant size always helps. If you wanted to plant something that got more like 4 feet, it would require some periodic pruning if branches started to grow out into the sidewalk, but let's decrease maintenance. Let's go with plants that are about 3 feet wide at maturity or smaller. So let's try some Daphne, acanthus, maybe some fuchsias. That'd be fun to experiment with. See how well they do. If you'd like to learn more about plant selection, I created a free mini course called How to Choose the Perfect Plant to help you with this. It includes a perfect plant checklist so that you can go down the list and make sure you are considering everything before you're putting a plant in a certain place. And it's free because it's so foundational to successful gardening and landscaping just in general. So I hope it helps you. It's linked in the description below this video. And for those so inclined, the fact that the space is so close to the street creates an opportunity for some public art, a free library, free pantry, some sort of educational installation. You could put a game, something similar. This is not for everyone nor for every space, but oftentimes really fun. People do all kinds of cool things like this, and I'd love to hear your ideas in the comments below. What have you seen folks do in public spaces like this? Or what are you doing in your yard that you're having a great time with? People do all kinds of really cool things. So I don't know, what could you do with a public facing space like this? If you have a friend who's an artist, would they want to do some sort of installation in this area? It's worth considering. For our next design idea, we could use this space as an opportunity to increase privacy and decrease street noise, kind of increasing the comfort inside the yard. Perhaps some tall, narrow trees could be installed in this area between the existing trees, and it is okay if they grow together a bit. Classic arborvitae, of course. Maybe some tall, skinny juniper. We've got weeping Alaskan cedar. See my video with tall, narrow privacy plant possibilities. I'll link to that in the top right corner of this video right now. Having plants against a fence in general can decrease the lifespan of a fence. Keep that in mind, but many people do it. Many people love it. Proper plant spacing is important. Just set the plants a little bit off the fence. As plants grow, you'll notice that there are people who grow these hedgerows right up against a fence, and you'll notice that they probably can't get in between the fence and the hedge itself to prune it. This is because the plant is going to be growing toward the light. While it may grow against the fence, it's not always going to like push the fence over necessarily. It depends on what you plant, but a lot of times things will kind of grow up and around the fence if you put it really close to the fence. Still not ideal. Proper plant spacing is always best. If you have something that grows to be 3 feet wide, it should be at least 1.5 feet away from the fence, right? Or 2 feet away from the fence. That's the way you should approach this. And again, having something against a fence is going to increase the moisture against the fence. It's always going to decrease the lifespan of a fence, but a lot of people do it, and a lot of people would rather do that and have the benefit of the increased privacy, the noise barrier, the shade, and then just deal with the decreased lifespan. Perhaps a glossy leafed evergreen something could be sculpted to have more of an upright growing habit, grow kind of up and over the fence. It could be, again, this is something that'll take a little bit more pruning, but would be more like a sculpture and provide some year-round interest that's not a conifer. I think a strawberry tree or a more sun-tolerant camellia between the trees could be great examples, providing a bit more evergreen density while requiring less frequent pruning and sculpting than like a traditional hedge plant would. Vines on tall trellises, perhaps carefully and securely installed a bit off the fence, could also be interesting. There's also a lot of vines that produce edible, tasty things. And artistic-looking panels similar to this, very carefully, securely installed, could also be interesting and provide a sound barrier, a bit of privacy as well, without having to wait for plants to fill in. Of course, native plants are always ideal. I like to remind folks that it is possible and very easy to integrate native plants into a more manicured looking landscape if that's your style. Every native plant helps, so at least consider integrating them into the mix. And here in the Pacific Northwest, I would plant, red flowering currant, Oregon grape, evergreen huckleberry, ocean spray, maybe some salal, maybe some mock orange. Some of these things may need to be pruned. Snowberry would also be great. Some of these things would need to be, sculpted a little bit so that they fit the space. But these are some wonderful Pacific Northwest native plants that could do well in this area, at least worth experimenting with. And a narrow space like this could be a great opportunity for a native perennial garden. Plant a mix of these smaller, shorter pollinator plants for shade or part sun. Just put a mix of things in there and see how they naturalize. And if that naturalistic look with a bit more plant density was desired, layers of native plants could be installed, reflecting a local ecosystem. And you can notice what plants are thriving in those shady, though also hot and dry roadsides already. When you're driving down the street, just notice what's growing well. Ecosystem-inspired plantings can be wonderfully low maintenance and very beneficial because you're reestablishing this plant community where the plants are supporting each other. You're repairing this ecosystem in this space. So learning from what's doing well on its own without any maintenance can be a really great strategy if you can reflect that in this kind of space. It can also be interesting to plant things that produce food. I think it'd be really fun to try blueberries in this space. Though it's lower in direct sunlight, The blueberries will still produce berries if they don't get enough sun, but they don't produce as many. And especially in the areas between these trees, so, you know, maybe 3 blueberry bushes here, 3 blueberry bushes there, not directly under the trees. Just do a couple little blueberry patches and see what happens. If this were my yard, I think of all these ideas, I probably would do some blueberry bushes and then some native plants in between. If you're willing to prune plants that grow overhead in layers, be a little bit messier, you could do layers of things like honeyberry, serviceberry. You could do pawpaws, arbutus or strawberry trees, Coosa dogwood, elderberries, maybe persimmons, currants. Just a few examples. There are some, you know, evergreen, more herbaceous perennial sized plants. We've got daylilies, lovage, mint, chives, tradescantia, alpine strawberries. Any shade-growing perennial vegetable would be an option. And Pacific Northwest natives like tall Oregon grape, evergreen huckleberry, salal. These have so many, you know, edible or medicinal uses. And also we mentioned growing things up a trellis potentially in this space. Akebia or kiwi vines, grapes even could be interesting options in a space like this. There's an edible plant for every spot. They may not be the neatest edible plant, but even in the case like a blueberry bush, for example, these things most people wouldn't even notice that they aren't a landscaping plant until there's berries on them. Frankly, this space would have been more useful if it were inside the fence, right? Inside the yard. By placing the fence here offset from the sidewalk so much, like we're creating this dead zone, this basically unusable space. It's a pretty uncomfortable space to spend time in. So if you're designing the layout of your yard, you should try to avoid spaces like this when possible. Granted, there are a lot of places where there are rules and regulations as far as how close to you know, a sidewalk, a street, a property line, a structure that you can place a fence, and that's probably what happened in this case. But if it's avoidable, it's good to just change the location of this fence if you're designing the layout of your yard. Put the fence in a slightly different place, and then there is no challenging area to begin with. Regardless, the fence is here now, and this is us making the best use of this opportunity. If you have a challenging area and you would like the chance to be featured in an upcoming Landscape Design Challenge video, I would love it if you would submit your photos. There's a link in the description below and some additional details. I can't feature everyone, I hope you understand, but if you're willing to submit some photos, you may be featured in an upcoming video. And remember that even though I am a landscape designer, I am not your landscape designer. Every yard is different, every climate is different, best practices are different everywhere, so it is always up to you to do additional research and determine what is best for you and your yard. A YouTube video is not enough information alone to go off of for something like this. And if you're new here, hello and welcome to Garden Project Academy. My name's Eve Handlin. I'm a horticulturist. I'm a certified horticulturist. I'm a landscape designer. I am a plant nerd, and this is Garden Project Academy. I'm offering online courses and resources to help you with your next garden project. I hope to help you be more successful when you're starting, when you're taking an area like this that's you have no idea what to do with it. You want to turn it into something beautiful, something beneficial. I hope to provide you with the resources to make it a little bit easier for you to do that. So if you'd like to learn more, I've got resources in the description below. I've got that free mini course, How to Choose the Perfect Plant. I've got a newsletter. I've got a waitlist for an upcoming Design Your Own Landscape Layout course. All kinds of fun things going on. Hope to see you there, and thank you so much for watching.